Hello, and welcome to the Quantum Bridge with myself, Casper, with my co-host Gary, and today with a returning guest, which
Mm.
I'm particularly pleased about, actually, because he's a guest who was really fantastic, humble, knowledgeable, insightful last time, and things move very quickly in the world that we're about to be talking about. So before I go on too much, I'm going to pass across to Gary, who will get us started.
Mm. Yes, so welcome back, Asher. It's great to see you again.
Thanks for the very kind intro.
That's all right. And we know it's busy times. There's a lot of changes in the crypto space, which we're going to be talking about. A lot more regulations I see. So maybe you can explain what's been happening over the last few months in terms of the regulations around these what we would crypto cards and things, payment cards.
Cool.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So there have been two sets of regulations. One that's come into effect last month,
Mhm.
which they call it the travel rule, and there's a new set of regulations coming in effect next week for crypto assets under financial promotions. So two separate rules, but depending on what type of cryptocurrency user or cryptocurrency company you are, both might apply to you. One might apply to you, none might apply to you. But generally speaking, if you interact with crypto in any way, I think in the UK, both are most likely applicable to you. So the first set of regulations was the travel rule. So the travel rule is a set of guidelines set up internationally by member countries of the Financial Action Task Force. And they have a sort of a guideline which they expect each member country to follow. And member countries can interpret the regulations sort of their own way, but generally speaking, has to follow these guidelines. And this travel rule basically states if you're sending money to someone in another country or another place, you have to supply some supporting information. So for us as a centralized cryptocurrency company, if you use us to send to your mate somewhere across the world who's using another cryptocurrency exchange, previously all you had to do in the UK was just give the cryptocurrency address.
Yeah.
And now you have to give that with some supplementary information. And not only that, the receiving party has to more or less confirm the information as well. So that seems,
Mm.
a
I
bit
mean,
complex.
yes, we were trying to move away from some of this stuff and make these things more seamless. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that's an interesting one. The UK's interpretation of the rule is, I would say, it's quite heavy-handed. In other countries who have also implemented the rule, for instance, the United States, there is a threshold for how much you can send without having to provide supplementary information. And in the UK, they've said, nope, there's no threshold. If you send whatever amount, you have to give this information, which I'm not going to go too much, but it is what it is. This was coming for some time. There are a lot of solutions on the market to help companies like us comply, but no one really knew what was going to happen on day one when the thing went on. Who's going to share the information? Unlike a banking network, the cryptocurrency exchanges are quite decentralized. We all rely on a blockchain, but we don't really specifically have communications between exchanges as much as maybe some other institutions have. So I think just getting the messaging back and forth has been slightly problematic. Um, if you're a cryptocurrency user who uses their own private wallet, so maybe you have a browser extension like MetaMask, or you run your own client on your computer, um, there's some exemptions for that right now, so you're not really covered by those rules. But for a cryptocurrency exchange like ours, a centralized one, those rules apply. So, yeah, for us, it has been, I would say quite a lot of work, and there's still quite a lot of work to be done. So there's minimal interferences or delays on the user side. But I think that's something the whole industry is working through right now. So I'll just leave that as it is. We could speak for hours on that. Second bunch of rules that's coming up next week. It's the new financial promotion rules. So that states that any sort of communication to a UK audience will have to be done by a registered firm with the FCA for cryptocurrency, or you'll have to sort of use an agent or an approval process. So in essence, this covers social media, your app on the App Store, and even your website. So, it is my understanding that if you're an international exchange operating in maybe an exotic location, or maybe not even an exotic location, but not having a presence in the UK, and not being registered with the FCA, you basically can't service UK consumers at all. So that's been an interesting one. We've seen some big companies like even PayPal say they're going to pause their crypto services in the UK till they figure it out. And other companies have said that they're also pausing their service until they figure out how to deal with these promotions. For us, the financial promotions rules on I would say not a big hindrance to us. I mean, we're already registered. All our communications, we would say are clear, fair, and not misleading, and we have an internal approval process already. So I think that hasn't been too bad for us. But for instance, if you ran a website that made its money through, crypto exchange comparison, or you wrote reviews, paid reviews for certain cryptocurrency services, that business model, even though you might not be an exchange yourself, these rules would still affect you and how you would conduct your business.
Wow. That feels very far reaching to me.
It is. So understandably, a lot of people are worried. This also goes that penalties go up to unlimited fines and up to 2 years of imprisonment. And even though you might not be domiciled in the UK, that might stuff up your chances of ever having a nice holiday in London.
Yeah. Is the general consensus about this amongst maybe your peers or what you're reading and seeing, that this is sort of draconian and very heavy-handed, or is this something to do with? Is there a sense that there has to be this movement towards more sort of uniformity, and I suppose a lack of decentralization or obviously centralization in the crypto space, and that's inevitable? What are you getting a sense of how others are feeling and reacting to this, Asher?
I mean, as a cryptocurrency user, anything that makes me, take an extra step, it's always a hassle,
Agreed. Yeah.
I regardless if it's a good rule or a bad rule, that's just interfering with my own normal routine. It's going to create a lot of hassle. Most of these rules tend to mirror other existing rules for investments, maybe crowdfunding, or certain types of investment classes. So in the FCA's eyes, they're saying you're just another investment type, which sort of makes sense for those who are in it purely for investment purposes. But again, cryptocurrency is, it's quite nuanced and means different things for different people, and a lot of people try to use it in different ways. So I think in that way it is quite restrictive. It definitely dampens the possibility of new projects and new ideas coming out from this space. But again, this is the UK's interpretation of these new world of cryptocurrency guidelines. Last year Treasury announced they wanted to become a hub for for crypto in the world, but I think now we've seen people are moving in different directions around the world. It's sort of a geopolitical shifts, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, at the basic level, maybe someone like me as an end user, obviously, I had a message from CoinJar saying that a simple thing like I couldn't refer a friend anymore. There was no incentive kickback for doing something like that. I know that might seem a small thing, really, but for me, it just seemed to be meddling in what someone like yourself might want to do as a business in promotional terms. It seems odd, really. And is it maybe sort of a bit specific to this crypto market? I mean, I assume I don't know, like regular stocks and investments.
Yeah, so I would say regular stocks and they also have the same bar applied to them.
Okay.
So, in one aspect, it doesn't feel too different. But again, there is some amount of, creativity and emergence of new ideas from this cryptocurrency industry, which don't really fall squarely in that, I'm going to buy the stock in a company and, watch it go up or down. And even on the other extreme, if you look at gambling in the UK, which is, very prevalent and has their sort of own regulatory bodies and rules around it. And you can, again, argue that, it's too lax or not strict enough. But again, there is a framework that they've come up with that seems to work at the moment. And I feel like cryptocurrency maybe should have a bit of the same, but currently we fall under the purview of the FCA, and the FCA has put us in the bucket with all the other investment services they have. So, on one point, yes, it's quite onerous, especially many cryptocurrency companies are still emerging, still quite small, not like maybe a stockbroking company who has been around for a long time. So the bar is quite onerous for a small company and, definitely feeling the pinch a bit.
Yeah. The whole thing with the crypto space for me is that a lack of barriers to entry, an ability to do pretty much what you want with whom you want without having that sort of big brother aspect to being too pervasive. And as you rightly say, the other thing is about creativity. It felt like a space where, not least because of the plethora of different coins that there are out there and the different angles that some of those take, whether it be that they look at sponsoring projects or they're linked to other companies and whatever, or that they're meme coins, which just come along and explode for a while and fall away. But, people can have a bit of fun without putting in a lot of money. All of this stuff top down obviously goes against really the whole creed, I suppose, of the quantum bridge. We like this openness and freedom. How are other countries responding to this? Have you got a sense? I know obviously you operate in Australia as well and whatever, but have you got a sense of how are people looking at the UK and thinking, oh dear, that's where it might be all going? Or do you think that, and also the other thing I wanted to ask you was, do you feel that there will be a growth of some sort of collaboration in these different markets and territories where there will be people coming along and teaming together and saying, we can push back a bit? Not necessarily quite as a union, but we a bit like what you mentioned with the gambling.
Yeah, so I would say the UK's interpretation is probably the strictest, if not one of the strictest in the world. We've seen companies decide to move base, and I don't think it's a new phenomenon. You've seen crypto companies seeking, homes that they can, have discourse with a regulator, or they feel that they're not unfairly, put down in any way compared to the competition. So we are seeing a trend of, some companies are moving to the Middle East, which, has an emerging regulator that is, a bit more permissive and again, a bit more exploring growth options. But then, you've got this sort of block of countries as well, which are probably going to tend closer to the FCA's interpretation of things. So, I'm not sure how this plays out, but it's, it's a global phenomenon, and I think there are going to be shifts around the world of how countries want to treat this new class of cryptocurrency.
Do you feel it's in any way linked to the whole emergence of the CBDCs?
Not particularly. I think that's more symptomatic than the root cause. You'll have more centralized systems, and I think there's some one of the people who writes for our blog recently pointed to China as an example of at first, again, very much a growth space for cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And the government there making a about face and saying this is completely outlawed. So as much as the UK might have tough rules, at least you still can buy cryptocurrency, unlike maybe in China where that's not available to you via your regular paths. But in China they also have a lot of financial super apps and this concept of a centralized digital currency as well. So I think that's one way things could go, and I think China is definitely an example of how some countries choose to manage this cryptocurrency phenomenon. The UK feels like it's maybe well-intentioned in some ways. A lot of it is around consumer protection, not letting international companies maybe have an unduly negative influence on British or UK residents. At the same time, again, for the common user, this just screams of a lot more hassle than what I used to go through.
Yeah. Gary, have you got any insights or thoughts?
Well, I just wondered in terms of how this affects you as a company in your expansion type things. I don't know how. I mean, is it still obviously like Casper mentioned, you're in Australia and the UK? Still not available in America yet? Your CoinJar?
Yeah, we're still working on a licensing in America, which again has their own unique financial regulations where it works state by state there as opposed to on a national basis. So you basically have to go into each state and get approval for a money transmitter license, which again, it's a very decentralized approach, but having to put in 50 applications, it is a bit of a work. We also have some European licensing applications we have in the works as well. And the EU are looking at a unified crypto license to come out next year called MiCA. So that will sort of, have a new block of regulation. So I think it's not crypto specific, but I think, how we manage our financial lives around the world ultimately are going to be governed by, one or two of these sort of blocks of regulatory interpretation of what your personal finances need to look like.
Yeah. And in terms, I just wanted to ask in terms of adoption and two things in terms of actually how many people are coming on board and adopting. But I think there's a broader question, because you may or may not even want to answer that one, but about people becoming less fearful, more educated, more predisposed to engaging with crypto, and also to the model of actually spending crypto as though it were cash. How do you feel that the whole background to your business in the public perception has moved since, I think we spoke about 5 months ago now, Asher? Do you feel the game has moved on?
I mean, I think interest in this sector quite mirrors the price. And with high price activity, it just brings more attention and more people asking questions. Is this for me? Can I use this? What happens if my regular card got replaced by a crypto card? And I think those conversations, around a dinner table at a barbecue usually happen when the price is high. So I would say the last 5 months, we wouldn't have seen quite a lot of change.
Fair enough. Yeah.
If anything, we hope that the new crypto regulations will bring, a slightly wider audience in the UK. I think we found, most of the middle ground in the UK are still quite hesitant to dabble in this. I think, like, compared to Australia, who maybe have a higher risk appetite or maybe a greater acceptance for alternative or upstart systems. we've seen more of a sort of a wider acceptance of cryptocurrencies, and I think in the UK, although it's a growing market, it's still sort of on the fringe or seen as too high risk. So maybe this will sway perceptions slightly, even with the higher bar. But hey, things are always evolving, and who knows how this will eventually.
Yeah, Gary and I have been having conversations with the guys who are running companies like Glint and Tally. So those companies where you can invest in precious metals, mainly gold, and then spend that on a card as well. And there's interesting parallels, despite the fact that gold is seen as a pretty long-term go-to in difficult times. I think that they're very similar, actually, to what you've just mentioned, in that it really has to be an appetite to step away from the traditional areas. Some mortar banks disappear, then maybe actually there will be this sense that it's all virtual anyway. So why not it be virtual with some of your asset portfolio in crypto, some of it may be in gold, and maybe some of it remains in either the banking world or does actually move into this area of CBDCs as well. So I do understand what you're saying when it's not just about crypto and the card. It is about a psychological shift. But we certainly on the channel are seeing a lot more of that and a lot more openness to that. So interesting. Gary, have you got anything else to add?
Well, I was just wondering, it's like, as Asher mentioned, with this sending sort of transactions to friends and things like that. So I guess at the moment, in terms of the end user going into a store and just spending, nothing's changed in that way now.
No,
that's exactly
not with the CoinJar card. I mean, it's more exchange to exchange, crypto to crypto, which I think is the biggest hurdle right now. From centralized,
and have you been adding?
Decentralized.
I haven't looked recently, Asher, although I did add a few new coins to my very small tally of them on CoinJar. Have you managed to add any other coins recently, or are there any other forthcoming or upcoming that you can allude to or mention?
Yeah, I mean, we're tracking some interesting projects right now. I think we've seen Telegram recently come up with the Telegram coin, which has been in work for some time, but I think that might it's quite a big platform, also very popular around cryptocurrency users. So we'll see how that tracks, and if it meets our listing requirements, that's something on the radar. But again, it's that time of the market cycle where everything's a bit quiet, maybe for good reason. But hey, we'll see how the market turns out, and I guess what new interesting ideas come out of some of these new coins and projects, as the price action starts to increase.
Because it is rather nice that you do have these more meme-like coins as well, like Pepe, Shiba, obviously Doge. You've even got AMP on there. So, for people out there who like any of those or are interested in this space, and those that move a little bit more interestingly, if you get involved with CoinJar, you are able to take those. They are the sort of things I've seen go up and down fairly drastically. Certainly things like Pepe, for example. So, I think it's a huge amount of fun, just a much more interesting way to have some of your funds allocated into there, and the chance of making or just watching interesting potential gains or actually spending them. And I can't think of any other area of finance where you could pay with a card and in the background actually have anything approaching fun. Right, good. Asher, is there anything else that you would like to add? Because it's great that you've chosen to come back, and we thank you for that, and particularly for giving that very a brilliant summary, actually, and a very accessible summary to things that aren't easy to necessarily navigate or understand. So before you go, is there anything either about the company, about you, about next steps, or about the wider industry that you'd like to leave on?
Yeah, I mean, one aspect of cryptocurrency is the aspect of being able to manage it yourself. So we're an intermediary, we're a company, but we also fall squarely into regulation. For many people, the type of company we are is the only way you'll ever interact with crypto. So I think it's a good first step, but there are also ways where you can learn to manage your own wallet. If you're interested in those aspects of finance. And I think, all parts are part of an ecosystem. So it's not like you could just use centralized exchanges. There's, DeFi, there's self-hosted wallets, and sort of new emerging trends in crypto as well. So I think my suggestion is, if you're new or just getting started, you might choose a service that's easy to use. But as your proficiency grows, I think there are some ways where you can take more custody of your finances, if that's important to you, and leverage the power of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's certainly a learning curve, isn't there, in that, in that way? I mean, we've been on it because, I don't know, we're old, or I am. So it's kind of like, you start buying these things and then you're like, well, I need, they talk about cold storage wallets and things. You're like, oh, no, not something else. And then, you're getting your head around this stuff. And then before you know it, then you've got like a CoinJar card and you're like, oh, now I can spend this. And for me, that's a great sort of a bridge into the market, because I think people worry, well, I haven't got much money, and if I tie it, it's stuck. And it's kind of like, no, with these new technologies like your company, it allows us to still be sort of fluid and liquid in that way. So it's quite, I find it useful, because I don't need to keep it, whatever little I do have in the bank, I can move it out. And then I'm like, well, okay, if I get short 1 month, I've got a little bit on the card there, and I can use my Pepe to go on the underground, which I did on the weekend.
That's brilliant.
So it saves me sometimes. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely point to end on, actually, that with CoinJar, we've found that, one, you get the ability to play in the crypto space, and to do that with a feeling of security and ease. It's easy to use. It's a great first foray. And then over time, using the card becomes another interesting experience. The idea of playing, as Perry says, in those, particularly in the more meme coins, there's something just fun about that. And then, of course, you will go off onto different directions in your crypto journey. And I think all of it is just being about having discernment and taking your time and not feeling pressure to do any of this, but knowing it's available and that you can engage very inexpensively. You can begin this whole journey without risking anything that's going to damage you. And I think for ourselves, for you as a business, obviously, and for our audience, that's just hugely important. So, Asha, I hope you join us again in the future. I'm sure things would move on very quickly again. You're always welcome back. But for now, thank you very much for coming on again.
Thanks, all.
And the very best for CoinJar.
Cheers.
Right. Take care.
Okay.